In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Superman.
Our Mars space station must be saved.
Wonder Woman.
And while Clark Kent gets that story, Superman will guard that operation?
Batman.
Unless my memory fails me.
And it never has to my memory.
Aquaman.
Hold her steady, Wonder Woman. Look out below!
And those 3 junior super friends, Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog.
Let's put all the evidence together.
Their mission, to fight injustice, to right that which is wrong, and to serve all mankind.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of the world's greatest Super Friends podcast. The trouble alert has sounded, and your Super Friends have gathered. It's your old pal, John S. Drew here, and joining me, as always, is our Superman from 13thdimension.com, Mr. Dan Greenfield. Hey, Dan.
Hi, John.
Oh, man. So after the rise and love that we had for Too Hot to Handle, now we come upon the androids, which is a different animal altogether than what we saw last time.
Completely different.
Completely different. Now, those of you that are listening on the Batcave feed, you may be wondering, what the heck? What is this doing there? What does this have to do with Batman other than Batman and Robin were in the episode? I'm going to make the argument as we go through this that this is probably one of, at least to this date, the best examples of like how they tried to do Batman 66 humor in this show. You have a different opinion on this, though. I mean, you agree with me that it's Batman 66, but for other reasons.
Well, see, here's the thing. And again, I'll preface this because I want to tell the listeners that I'm not going to harp on this throughout the episode because I really don't like to, we didn't do this so that we could criticize things within an inch of its life. That's not what Super Friends is supposed to be about. And I really like the tone that you've taken with Joe Stuber over on your Filmation 77 episodes, where you take it on its own terms. But one thing that we've said from the outset on these first season Super Friends episodes is that it can be a tough slog at sometimes. The stories are overlong. There's too much Wendy and Marvin. The conflicts aren't great, and so we're doing all of this, and we're building up toward the second season where things radically change, and really the show starts to become what you really think of when you think of Super Friends. But in any event, I watched this episode, and there's a lot more humor in this episode. There's a lot more campiness in the episode, and the big distinction is that I didn't think it worked, and you did think it worked.
I did.
So we'll have a lot to talk about.
I mean, look. This episode, the positives, I thought outweighed the negatives. Is this the best? No. Too Hot to Handle was the best so far.
Yeah, I agree.
But, I mean, right off the bat, this is another episode where we don't get a whole cutesy opening with the kids. We start out.
At Cape Courageous, America's 20th manned launch to the moon is ready for blastoff.
Mission control to Hermes 20. All systems are go. We continue the count at 15, 14, 13, 12, 11.
At the Hall of the Justice League, the Super Friends are gathered to watch this exciting launch into space.
8, 7, 6.
And I did like this because now we get a sort of idea that this version of the Super Friends takes place in the future because we've already had 20 moon landings with Hermes 20.
Right, I know. But even that, I thought to myself, that's kind of weird. But my takeaway wasn't that they were necessarily in the future, just that they're in this other comic book universe. I didn't necessarily think that they were, that it was supposed to be 10 years down the road or anything. I just thought they exaggerated everything. That's the way I saw that.
Okay. All right. Because I mean, that there were only actually 6 moon landings.
Right, of course.
And right off the bat, I'll say it. There was that one line there as they're watching the launch and everything. There's that line from Batman where he says,
Unless my memory fails me.
And it never has to my memory.
This is the first time in the history of space exploration that we've not had to hold the countdown. 5, 4.
Yeah, I know. Right. I thought that was great. Yeah, it was a funny line. But I also like the fact that, I always get a kick when it's just the Super Friends chilling.
Yes.
They're just hanging out. The moon launches. Why don't we go? Let's go have a watch party at the Hall of Justice. I mean, if it's the 20th one, you'd think by now it would be old hat. And so they would all be doing whatever it is they do in Gotham City or Metropolis or whatever. But no, they're just chilling in the Hall of Justice. Hey, let's watch the launch, and then they're all surprised that it's successful. Well, if they've done it 20 times before, chances are it's going to work out fine. But I'm just making fun now. But I liked about it that it did remind me about the excitement that we did used to have as kids whenever there was any kind of rocket launch. It was a big deal. And that's something that people who are of our generation remember. I'm not old enough to remember the first moon landing. I was a toddler. But I do remember later ones and remember how exciting it was and how exciting it was to go to the Hayden Planetarium at the Museum of Natural History in Manhattan, and all of that stuff was just so exciting. So to see it here, I really liked that. I was like, there were certain things that as a kid that were like shared experiences. And one of them as a kid was the excitement over the space program, because it was a cool, I mean, I even remember like right around this time, I had a school assignment. It was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, the first one was, I want to be a writer. And then the second one was, I want to be an astronaut. We were the tail end of that generation where the astronauts were still a big deal.
Yep. I remember the first time one of the kids in my class came in with some like color pictures from a Skylab, and I was like, "Where did you get those?" And they went, "Oh, you can just write to NASA, and they send you." And he gave me the address, and from that point on, for like 6 years, probably till about 1980. Maybe 5-6 years, something like that. I was constantly, I'd write NASA, I just saw this thing. Are there pictures? Blah, blah, blah. And then boom, I get this little manila envelope come in, and there was the press stuff. Basically, they sent out of the press. They sent it to kids. And I was like, this is freaking awesome. I wish I still had them. That's the thing that kills me. I know, lost to the, like a lot of things you wish you'd held on to and stuff. But I mean, I was in it hook, line, and I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I love $6 Million Man so much, because NASA worked with them on a lot of the episodes and stuff, and you can see it in the production.
I mean, I was still taken with the whole notion of it that when I was a freshman in college, I took an astronomy class. Gigantic mistake. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. It was like watching paint dry. I was like, this isn't fun. This is math. Anyway, where were we?
Well, we're talking about, like I said, there's the launch, and it's coming from Cape Courageous, another cute little thing I'm like looking there at, and we also get that.
But misspelled. Did you notice that it's misspelled on the sign?
No, I missed that.
Yeah, I'm like, what is? I mean, I know that a lot of this stuff was farmed out, and for. I know that in all seriousness, I don't think they were not all American houses. I think some of these houses were overseas. So English might not have been the first language, but the word courageous is misspelled and then spelled correctly and then misspelled again, depending on what background they're using. Yeah. Yeah. There's a few of those actually in this episode. There's a dinning room as opposed to a dining room.
I did
There's
catch
a couple
that one.
Yeah. So anyway,
I did like the fact that once again our main cast is doing double voice duty there because they're the crew and technicians at the base.
Right.
You know? Yeah. I mean, there's just little things that just I'm like, cool. Colonel Wilcox is back.
We're getting a CDQ from the SDI.
Super friends. Moments ago, Hermes 20, having just attained moon trajectory, suddenly plunged earthward and crashed. My men on the scene have just radioed me that no one could have survived, but our astronauts are missing. I repeat, missing.
But it can't be. Impossible.
Unbelievable.
That kind of stuff always, me in continuity, little things like that. If you always push the same button, to start. I still remember to this day, well, like it's not like it's a vague fact or anything like that, or vague memory. William Hartnell was always particular about that with Doctor Who, with the first, because he was the first Doctor, and he would always tell people, no, because the director would go over there and push the button, open the door. He goes, that's not where we open the door. We open it over here. He goes, well, I've got you blocked here. He goes, but it's over here. This is where the kids remember it, and they know the console and where everything goes. Don't mess around with that. Now you got to reblock this shot. And that was me. When I would see things like that, that kind of continuity made me feel like, okay, this is real. This is real. Not so much, they care. I didn't get that at the time. But it was like, this is real because it's, oh my God, there's a new CDQ from the SDI, whatever the hell that is. You know?
Right, whatever it is, CDQ. I still don't know what that is.
You know, but I loved it. And we get, Wilcox talking about Dr. Rebos, who wants, he sends this message. And again, here's the campy bit is he's phoning it in and he doesn't have enough change to complete the call. So the tape recorder stops, but then it starts up again as he found change and calls back in. He wants all space flights stopped.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't know why until later.
Right. Exactly. But that, that's kind of the way it is with a lot of these episodes,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the whole James Bond thing. It's like, let the things play out. Everybody guess and try to figure out what's going on, and then get the big monologue from the villain that spells everything out for you.
Yeah.
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 Now, I mean, we've been watching a lot of James Bond lately.
Yes.
We were getting ready to watch, for the movie for April, and so we've been watching them basically a curated selection because even I can't go and watch Octopussy again. so we're sorry, but we're. We just finished all of the Connery and Lazenby ones. So the natural movie for us to watch next is now Austin Powers, which we're going to watch because that's basically a riff on just those first 7 movies. And I forgot how we got onto this point, but yes, right. Because Super Friends takes its cues from the storytelling that, we've seen this over and over where they have big mystery character, team, the characters break up. They all go off in different parts of the mission. The villain's doing his thing, and maybe he gives us a clue as to why he's doing it. Maybe he doesn't. And then ultimately, there's a confrontation with the villain, and the villain explains his mad vision of whatever it is. Usually to the kids. It seems to be they're the ones who always find him first.
Usually to the kids, and usually not because of any world domination or greed.
Right.
Just misguided. I think this is
always
wrong.
Misguided. Yeah. And I knew in this case, what is this going to be? I guessed right in this particular case. I don't know if we're going to jump that far ahead right now.
I mean, we can if you want to.
Sure. It's his whole point is that he's against space travel because he thinks that there's so much wrong going on Earth in terms of poverty and social injustice. That money is being wasted on the space program. And, he's the interesting thing is that was actually a debate in real life. That with everything that was going on in particular, remember, think about when we were. This is the 70s. This was, the 60s. It was all, it was the political propaganda of the space race. And then after a while, there are people who started thinking, why are we spending all of this time to collect a bunch of moon rocks when actually we've got cities dying right below our feet? So the notion of this debate has been a real one.
Yeah.
So, but this one, it's just, as is always the case with Super Friends, they tend to defend the status quo while at the same time recognizing that there are issues on the planet that need to be fixed. So here they automatically, the idea of going to space is a good idea. The whole space program is a good idea. That is taken as a given. And the other guy is just misunderstood, but his point is still a reasonable point to make. Do you follow that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense then over time. And again, I'm not saying sense in a good way, but it makes sense then the mentality of how the space program has sort of fallen to the wayside in many respects because it's not getting the big glamour results. It wasn't doing it and such. And people were probably, more and more people were probably like, this is crazy, Yeah. I mean, granted, in the end, they don't realize what the program and again, that's poor communicating on NASA's part.
The scientific exploration and all of that. Now, I don't misunderstand me. It's not like I'm an anti-vaxxer. I'm pro-science, and I understand the nature of space exploration and why it is important. But there are people who just simply don't recognize it. And part of it, I think, is because we don't have the space race anymore. We don't have that excitement, that sense of accomplishment, the sense of unity that brought. I mean, I do remember as kids, we're like, oh, did you see or we would watch it in class if it was like a morning launch or whatever, because it usually was. And it was a thing, and the astronauts were celebrities. You knew these guys' names, and I mean, anyway, we're getting way off point. But anyway, back to the episode.
Well, I just wait because now you brought a memory, because it's like, I went to a Catholic school. So when the TV cart got rolled in, it was one of two things. It was either Davy and Goliath or it was a rocket launch.
I love Davy and Goliath. I love that show. I didn't, I used to watch that show on Channel 5, on Sunday mornings, having no idea that it was religious.
Yep.
Like, I was just like, I like Davy and Goliath. This is great. Well, gee, Davy, you shouldn't go out on the thin ice. There's, it's okay, Goliath. Everybody's doing it.
Yep.
Oh, gee, I don't think that's what your mom would want you to do, Davy. Love that show.
Yeah.
Great show.
Now, again, this thing just has little bits in it that the moment I see it, I smile and I'm like, okay, we get Clark Kent.
Fantastic, Superman. I've never been to a space installation before.
Neither have I. It's a good thing we got top secret clearance.
Now, while I get my story, you kids in Wonder Dog can look around the place and have fun. Maybe you can do a term paper on it.
Can't we just have fun?
Clark Kent of the Galaxy Broadcasting System. Here's my top secret pass.
Here's mine.
And mine.
Go right through, folks.
Clark Kent is going to cover the next launch for his TV network. All right, he didn't even say for the Daily Planet. It's for TV.
It's WGBS.
Yes.
Well, that's because by this time in the comics, now this was something directly lifted from where it's interesting because they never make any mention. They make Robin older than he was on the Batman 66 or the Filmation cartoons. He's clearly older. And especially in contrast to Wendy and Marvin, who you think are probably like 16 or 17.
Right.
And Robin, both in terms of his physical size and his behavior and his voice, even Casey Kasem plays him a little bit more adult than he did in the 60s cartoons. And you would think of him as more around 18 or 19 as opposed to 15 or 16. So there's a distinction there. And of course, in the comics at the time, Dick Grayson had left for Hudson University at the end of 1969. And he was, they moved him out. And so by the time Super Friends came out in the comics, Robin was not in Gotham City. He was in New Carthage and Hudson University, and he had his adventures, and Batman had his adventures, and occasionally they would meet up again. But by and large, they were separated. And it was, this was really the early days of the Bronze Age. But they never addressed that on, at least as far as I can remember. Maybe they will eventually. But they don't really address that on the show. It is still Batman and Robin. However, Superman, by this time in the comics, had changed over. He was not working at the Daily Planet at this point. He was working as an anchorman for WGBS News in Metropolis. And in an attempt to modernize the Superman comics, they had everybody working for a TV station as opposed to the Daily Planet. And this went on all through the 70s. And really, they didn't really bring the whole idea of the planet back, or to the extent that they did, until John Byrne rebooted Superman in the 80s with Man of Steel. So, most of you probably already know that, but for those of you who don't, that's why he doesn't say in the episode, I'm covering this for the planet. It's WGBS, which I was like, holy crap, that's right. He wasn't even working for the planet at that point. But the part that got me is that, first off, we do finally see Clark Kent. We do finally get an acknowledgement that they know, because we've been talking about this. Until now, it was not clear whether or not they knew each other's secret identities. Okay? So now we know that they know. But get this, the kids know.
Yes.
The kids know that Superman is Clark Kent. Yeah. And I'm like, well, now hold on a second. Doesn't that seem to be a little bit much? And then they go to Cape Courageous, and the kids get top secret passes to go onto the base. And this is where I was like, oh no, here we're going to have problems. Was because, I have this issue with the kids, and except for Wendy, and I don't really like the mashup. It's funny. I love the Scooby-Doo episodes where Batman and Robin are on it, but I think it's because Batman and Robin are on the episode, and it makes it different and special. Having basically a shrunken version of Mystery Incorporated mixed in with, because it is.
That's what it is. Yeah, no, you're right.
Let's face it, and having them mixed in with the adult superheroes is, for me, still does not really work on the whole. Zan and Jaina made sense. These guys don't. And the idea that Super Friend that the Wonder Dog, would come to the base and need a top secret pass, and then because he doesn't have one, they suspect him of being a double agent. This is where I know that this is not written for 53-year-old men. I know that this was written for 7-year-old kids. But even as a kid, that stuff would drive me nuts.
I just thought it was funny too.
I know. I can't. I should be able to roll with it. But it gets under my skin.
What's funny is that your takeaway was all that. My takeaway just was how un-Wendy-like, because there's Clark saying, maybe you can get a research paper out of it, and Wendy's like, "Can't we just have fun?" And I'm like, "Well, isn't that Marvin's
I thought that was
line?"
funny too. It is true. I also like how square Superman is. He goes, "You're good to go have fun," or, "Hey, maybe make a term paper out of it."
Yeah.
And you're right. And Wendy's like, "Can't we just have fun?" and Superman kind of goes, "Huh." There's a little bit of an exchange. But I also do like that Clark Kent is drawn in that classic with the blue suit and the red tie,
Yep.
and it's. I like the fact that they do that.
Yeah.
It's fun.
No, it's fun. It is definitely fun. And then we get because now we finally meet Dr. Rebos himself. We've only seen his voice so far, heard his voice. So now we see him and his assistant Loco, because Wonder Dog gets left behind because he forgot his pass. They trust the dog to bring his own pass. So.
Well, this is exactly this, and this is the part. And like I said, I don't feel bad knocking it, because as a kid I didn't like it either. I remember very distinctly not liking Wendy and Marvin. Or specifically Marvin and Wonder Dog. Again, I never had a real strong feeling about Wendy, and only now do I recognize in rewatching these that Wendy is the smartest member of the entire team. But yeah, they this whole side story with Wonder Dog, we don't have to belabor it either, is just, to me, is it just doesn't work.
No, but at least for once it does. Well, like, as far as this bit here, because they show up, and I do love it. They go, "Quick, put on our disguises," and they put the press hats on. Like, that's so Batman 66. Like, that's gonna.
It's true.
That's gonna disguise.
Although, when you saw Dr. Rebos for the first time, I thought to myself, "That's the Joker's head."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah," and I thought, is this going to be the Joker? And then I thought, no, I don't remember the Joker ever popping up on episodes this early. I said, it's not, there's no way.
Yeah.
But I just realized, I was like, oh, again, this. I could have easily seen a scene where he took off a mask and it was actually the Joker behind all this.
Well, it's like the hair and everything.
Yeah, the hair, the whole thing, and then Loco just looks basically like an Igor type character.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole bit with them wanting to take a picture, I'm like going, what is the point of this? This is so stupid. As they're going through the whole thing, taking the picture, but the picture was so that they could go back and create the Wonder Dog android. Okay, that at least there's a payoff. It takes a hell of a long time to get to that payoff, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does. It does.
Now, I thought this was interesting too. So they're making the robot or the android, not the robot.
Right, exactly. They don't say robot.
No.
Yeah.
There's Clark, and he's interviewing one of the technicians, right?
This, of course, is the brain center of any space launching operation. If there were going to be any sabotage, this would be the likely place.
What about security precautions?
Airtight. Guards all around the installation. And, of course, our alarm system is the best in the world. Finally, our closed-circuit TV scanning cameras. Keep a watchful eye on every corner of the installation.
Well, it certainly looks as if you've got everything covered.
Everything. Even if Superman were standing guard, we couldn't be better protected.
And I thought this was really interesting. Rebos is voiced by Casey Kasem.
Right.
The technician is voiced by a guest actor. It's not one of the regular crew. And I'm like thinking, why didn't you reverse the roles if you're going to have a guest like a villain like that and give somebody else a meatier part? Mind you, I thought Kasem did a great job.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's just
probably a budget thing. I mean,
guess.
that's there's so much of this was budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to admit, I also loved the amazing Chan and the Chan Clan technology that Rebos has, that he can turn his car into anything. That was one of my favorite bits of Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan was they just put number 18, bang. and just suddenly,
man, those other cartoons that used to be, it's again, not to get too far off point, but it's like I also do remember the other cartoons that I did watch and that I liked to watch. Like I was a big Speed Buggy fan for some reason. I love that show.
Right.
I don't know why. I mean, because they were all riffs on the same thing. They were all basically Scooby-Doo with okay, instead of the dog, it's a car.
Right.
A car that could, it was basically a sentient car. And they'd get into adventures and various trouble. I mean, I
love that whole thing, that kind of stuff. And as far as I remember as a kid, again, the consistency. You always had the same car when you pushed number 6. So
right. There you go.
But anyway, so I thought this was interesting, though, because they go in as a tour bus this time. They changed the car into a tour bus, and they've got the android Wonder Dog. They get past the guard. Wonder Dog android gets out of the car, goes back to the guard, and shows the path. It's like, why bother? Right. You're in.
Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness. But you know what I will say? Inside Mission Control itself, it's really cool.
It is.
This is one of the best animation jobs they've done, where when they show all of these scientists, and of course it's all men, given the time that it was, but they're all in their lab coats or they're all in their whatever. What they should have been is all in the short sleeves and ties.
Right.
That was the Mission Control look back then. But anyway, but you see them all at their desks or their consoles or whatever. But the big gigantic screen, of the Earth and all of the things popping and everything, I was like, that's actually really cool.
It is. But now you had a problem with the kids knowing Superman's identity and such. I had a problem with Wonder Dog just walking freely through the base. Granted, he's got his pass, and everybody knows him. Hey, Wonder Dog.
Like he's a celebrity.
Yeah,
I know. This is where we have to just simply let it go.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't, again, they were trying something here that is not something that, I struggle with some of these early episodes because I know that they're not, it's what we know in retrospect, and that is that we know that cartoons that can be done for all ages, cartoons that kids can enjoy and adults can enjoy that are done now, and certain shows that have really conveyed that over the last 15, 20 years, mostly, we're talking about the Bruce Timm stuff, but also even Marvel did some great stuff like with the Spectacular Spider-Man that, you can enjoy it as an adult, you can enjoy it as a kid. The thing about these these earliest Super Friends is that they were so written geared toward kids that logic often need not apply and humor injected where it's not even necessary. And I think that actually, and this is not to be a downer, I think actually this is why when I was a kid that I never was until really the Legion of Doom came along. I was never a huge Super Friends fan at the time. I liked it because it was on Saturday mornings and it had superheroes. But unlike some people who really love the show, I liked it okay enough. For me, it was Filmation was where it was at when it came to superhero cartoons. But that's why we also have the Filmation files,
right? Because
we can get into that too.
Yeah. Now I loved it from the start. And watch those 16 episodes over and over again from 73 to 76.
Yeah. See, for me, I didn't. I mean, I would watch it, but it wasn't quite as appointment television as some of the other stuff that I was watching.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I look back on it now and go, what the hell? Not because I wasted time, but I'm it's like looking at when they would do 6 episode seasons of Shazam. I'm like going, that's not a season, or something like. But we did. We watched it. And that was it. I don't know.
I love that show.
Yeah. I got to ask, though, again, here's a Batman 66-bit, the don't press button.
Right.
That, of course, Wonder Dog then presses and sabotages the launch. So.
Right, of course.
Or I should say the Wonder Dog android, just to be clear.
Yes, right, yes.
And then it leads again to another great line, because we go back to the Hall of Justice, and they're all there. And
you, sir, are a traitor to your Super Friends and a traitor to your country.
Colonel, those are very serious charges.
Batman, single-handedly, that dog has sabotaged our Venus probe.
But Colonel Wilcox, Wonder Dog is the most loyal dog in the world.
Loyal to whom? Us or the enemy?
He couldn't have done it. I'll bet a year's allowance on it.
Wonder Dog was seen at 0900 entering the top-secret control room by countless workers. And right after that, the computers and panels went up in smoke.
Holy airtight evidence, Batman.
It does look bad for Wonder Dog.
There must be another explanation, Colonel.
There is no other possible explanation. Wonder Dog is a double agent.
No!
He couldn't be.
How much dog food did it take to buy you off?
I know. I was like, oh, I know. We have different points of view on this.
I see. I loved. Yeah. I was cracking up.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. And then we get like another call in from Rebos, and it's funny because we saw this earlier on too. He's got this way of anticipating, what they're saying by kind of responding to them, as he makes the call, to them. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just picking up like Joe says. You got to just roll with a lot of this and just.
Joe, I agree, and it's changed my attitude. It really has, because I think that you have to take it for what it is. Look, if I'm really frustrated, I'll just simply roll over the Wonder Dog type stuff on the show because it's not hard to pick up where things are at.
Exactly. Absolutely.
The actual superheroing of this episode is pretty good. I will say this. I do like the creepiness of the androids. I also like how the astronauts, by the way, look like Major Matt Mason. Did you notice? I don't know if I don't think that was intentional, but they look like basically life-size Major Matt Mason characters because of the way their knees are and the way their elbows are and everything. But there are a couple of things that I really do like. I like the fact when they're able to capture Superman by using kryptonite.
Yes.
And I know this is going to be a stupid detail, but they're driving basically a food truck, and it's got that quilted lining that they use for refrigeration trucks. And like somebody had the presence of mind to have the detail to draw the food truck with that quilting on the side of the truck, and I thought that's great. So whoever thought to do that, I was like, that's a good on you, because that's a good detail. And a lot of these shows, just gloss over details. And I know that's a tiny, tiny thing to get to notice, but I was like, for whatever reason, that made me smile. I'm like, yeah, that's what coffee trucks look like.
Yeah, true. No, I agree with you. The superhero stuff is good. I mean, we get the bit there, and I love this shot because there's Wendy, Marvin, Wonder Dog outside the Hall of Justice trying to work out how they know Wonder Dog couldn't have done what he did, because they're going through his mourning and stuff. And as they're doing that, Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman take off, and we get that angle of the them flying away. And I thought that was pretty cool because we don't get a whole lot of just outside the Hall of Justice shots in the entire series.
No, no, you don't.
So,
because it was usually just a stock piece of matte painting.
Right.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Right. Yeah. And we get, Aquaman gets to do his bit. He's not as big in this episode, but he does.
As the plane passes the space installation, Aquaman prepares to jump.
Hold her steady, Wonder Woman. Look out below!
The instant he hits the water, Aquaman sends out telepathic waves to his undersea world. The small fish, all of whom are his friends, stop foraging for food and, following Aquaman's instructions, begin gathering seaweed. The swordfish come to Aquaman's aid. With seaweed for thread, the swordfish perform as huge needles. A net is quickly woven, nature's barrier, protecting the space installation from invasion by sea.
There's the whole thing with Wonder Dog and Wendy and Marvin running around and the confusion with the android. The thing that lets this story down is that, he sets up this whole thing where he replaces the astronauts with the androids, and they really don't play that up.
No. No. And then they just keep them sitting there in the Hall of Justice tied up in the corner, which they keep referring to. They keep showing them sitting in the Hall of Justice, and then the astronaut androids are just sitting there, hunched over in the corner, which is kind of this vaguely disturbing image. They're, of course it's Android and they're inanimate objects and you shouldn't care, but it is kind of weird looking when you see the Super Friends talking and over in the corner, these two guys tied up and bent over. I was just like this. And actually inside Dr. Rebos's lab with all of the androids, before they've been activated, kind of, the way they're strung up and everything, it's a little on the creepy side.
Yes.
I would say that Dr. Rebos is one of the creepier villains that we've had on the show so far. And especially because he's got this, he's got Loco, this kind of Igor character. He definitely seems to be a little bit more malevolent and a little bit creepier than some of the villains that we've seen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, the food truck, because there's the day of the launch for the Mars rocket. They want to send a rocket to Mars and stuff.
Right.
And you got the whole thing with the food truck, and this is very Batman 66. Batman buys some soup.
There's a little nip in the air. Maybe Batman would like a hot drink, coffee, tea, cocoa, chicken soup.
If you don't mind, sir, I'd like to see your catering truck license.
Of course, but it's not as good as my egg salad, huh? That's a little joke.
Well, everything seems to be in order.
And speaking of orders, what's it gonna be?
Is the chicken soup fresh?
But of course. I just opened this can this morning.
I'll try it.
That'll be $2.25.
That's a lot of money for a cup of chicken soup.
Oh, the chicken soup's only a quarter. The rest of the money is a deposit on the spoon. Your change, sir.
Your soup, sir.
Bon appetit, monsieur.
And there's that whole bit there where Robin is...
Holy Eureka's, Batman, look.
Good boy, Robin. That's it.
I wonder where the driver is.
Probably getting something to eat.
But this is a catering truck, Batman. He could have his own food for free.
Robin, you haven't tasted the chicken soup.
That's how you know there's something wrong. He's a bad guy.
Right. Exactly. But it's true. I mean, that's where, there's a lot more humor injected into this episode than in a lot of the others. And some of it works and some of it for me doesn't work. But I think that part of what let me down overall is that there's such a focus on Wonder Dog being a sentient. Dogs are sentient, but you know what I mean? Like this anthropomorphic, having a personality, having a sense of celebrity, all of that kind of stuff. Just, that's the part where it's like you're playing up one of my least favorite parts of the entire show. So it was a tougher one for me to get through. But the scenes that I liked were scenes that I liked, and I did think that it had some things going for it. There are also some good scenes. There's some good scenes between the characters themselves in terms of the actual superheroes, where they show them investigating the scene, and Robin is the one who finds the recorder, and they're all talking, and Robin is, they show Robin is kneeling down and he's digging through the wreckage and he's investigating, and then they also show them later when they're watching a console at the Hall of Justice, the way they're all crowded around the monitor, and there is some really nice animation. There's some balkiness, as there always is on these early episodes, but there's some good stuff in here too.
There is some good stuff, and you know what? We get the closest thing to what we're going to get in terms of a fight at the very end as Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Robin take on the androids in Rebos's base, while meanwhile Superman is up on Mars fighting, quote unquote, the Superman android.
Right, because they're androids, so they're able to get away with it. Remember, it was basically they're able to sidestep the censors here because they're going to have them battling robots as opposed to battling actual other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was the censors or if they're self-censoring, but they were because remember the difference between Filmation and Super Friends was that Super Friends, they really, in the first season, avoided legitimate conflict. It was always ferreting out the misunderstanding or trying to, or dealing with natural disasters and that sort of thing, as opposed to any real villainy.
And I got to say, because you pointed this out before, that a lot of times the Super Friends almost take it upon themselves to dispense justice by kind of almost letting the baddie, so to speak, get away. And this time around, it's like, well, we'll put in a good word for you, Rebos, but you got to pay for your crimes.
Yeah, I liked about that, because it's true. That was the part that's always kind of, I was like, I know that the reason that they chose to write the show like they did, because they had children in mind and they wanted to teach lessons and they wanted to, and they dealt with current events. They dealt with pollution a tremendous amount. The thing about the Super Friends that I'll give them is that they were definitely tapped into the zeitgeist, because they did not take place in a vacuum. The storylines all dealt with things that were going on in the real world that kids were aware of, pollution especially. was such a big deal. The space program, as we see here, these are things that kids are hearing about in school, and then they're just doing basically a riff on them. But the thing that up until this point, whether the character, their adversary, that's why I don't even want to call them enemies or villains, because they're really just adversaries, are either misguided scientists or aliens who have an objective that runs counter to what we do, and then we teach them the error of their ways, and then it just kind of ends. Here they actually say, "No, man, you're without saying it's like you're going to do time. We'll put a good word in for you, helping us out at the end, but you are going to have to pay the consequences," which I thought was refreshing.
Right. No, I agree. I did too. Now, I just quickly wanted, because I've been doing this with Joe with the Batcave when we're doing the Filmation 77s, because I'm watching these on the DC app, and I think it's really cool when they say, "Oh, you watched this, why don't you read this?" And they give you a comic book suggestion. Now, mind you, this comic book, other than it's a Super Friends comic book they suggest, has no connection to this story whatsoever. In fact, it's not even like our Super Friends of the 70s. It's the 2008 DC Super Friends comic book. They suggested issue number 8, and it's a story dealing with Green Lantern getting attacked by Scarecrow when Scarecrow hears that Green Lantern's getting the key to the city because Green Lantern has no fear.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. This was the one that
tied in with the toy line.
The title with the right. Yeah. Now that's funny. As a matter of fact, as we're talking, I on the morning that we're recording this, I just posted a story at 13th Dimension that went up this morning that DC is planning a second volume to complete the run of original Super Friends comic books from the 70s.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the first one was announced, and then it was canceled, and then it was resolicited, and it was due in June. It's due in June. The other one is due at sometime this fall. I don't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, if anybody wants the updates on what the status is on DC's reprints of the Super Friends comics, check out 13th Dimension. Keeping in mind, of course, that while we're recording this, we're also in the thick of the coronavirus, pandemic. And the comic book industry has more or less shut down right now. So when this stuff actually comes out is anybody's guess. But nevertheless, it's, eventually, within the next 6 months to a year, you'll be able to get all of the 1970s comic books. And those early ones do deal, I think they do deal with Marvin and Wendy. Or maybe was it Zan and Jano right off the bat or not? I'm not really sure.
When the series started? No, there was about 8 issues with Wendy and Marvin.
Right. And of course, the Treasury edition also was Wendy and Marvin.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's if you're a big Super Friends fan and if you're a listener to the For All Mankind podcast, that's right. Of course, Wendy. Right. Wendy. Yep. And then by all means, you should look into these books. A lot of people don't really love them because they are kids comics in the 70s and it's not the superheroes you're used to. But they're very charming, and of course, the creative team behind them, was very, very, very strong. You had Ramona Fraden was in there, and E. Nelson Bridlewell was writing it,
yes.
And there's a lot of fun stuff in those comics.
And the one thing the comics gave us that the TV show never did was a transition from Wendy and Marvin to Zan and Jana.
Right.
Which
exactly.
I got it even as a kid, because I will say that much, because as a kid. After 3 years of watching the same episodes with Wendy and Marvin, and they go the all new Super Friends. I'll be honest, at first, now mind you, since then I've changed my mind, but when I first saw it, I didn't like Zan and I was like, who are these idiots who are taking over for my Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog?
Oh, I liked them right off the bat.
See,
I thought. I instantly thought that they fit in better because they had superpowers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it was a bit jarring at first. And again, it was kind of like John Davey taking over as Captain Marvel on Shazam. It's like no explanation, no nothing. Just roll with it, kids. Here's Zan and Jana and Wendy and Marvin after all this time. Oh, well,
Yeah. Well, hey, look, we got 3 different Catwomen, and they never explained why one was different than the next.
And
so
that's the funny thing. I was bothered by, and I said it before on Batcave, bothered by Mr. Freeze, bothered by the Riddler, never blinked once with Catwoman. I don't know why.
Same thing.
Never
Same
blinked.
thing. The John Astin Riddler was always an asterisk to me.
Yeah.
And then the different Mr. Freezes never really bugged me that much.
Oh, it bugged me.
Yeah, it never really, I never really, never really, like I said, it never really bugged me. But the Catwoman thing just was one of those things.
Yeah.
So, it's an Eartha Kitt episode. And at that time, I wasn't even thinking in terms of seasons. I didn't realize that, it was season 1, season 2, season 3. It's like, it's a Eartha Kitt episode. It's a Julie. It's Lee Merriweather. It's the movie. It's the 4:30 movie. We get to see Lee Merriweather as Catwoman. So it is funny how they were just accepted without any kind of, explanation, which I like. That was made it part of the joke.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So really quick then, how many stars would you give this episode, The Androids?
I'll give it a 1.
You'll give it a 1.
And that's because you've talked me up about it.
Wow.
Your
so
enthusiasm has infected me a little bit. I really found that especially compared to the last episode that we did, the Too Hot to Handle, which I thought was, to this point, the best of the episodes in this first season. I thought that this was the weakest because of the heavy focus on kids, but it still had a lot to recommend it. It did have all that cool, space program stuff and your own enthusiasm. I do feel, and I promise if this is the only way you're familiar with me is through this podcast, you'd think I'm a curmudgeon or I'm overly critical. But the thing is that I'm not. I actually like to enjoy these things on their own terms. But for some reason, that some of the things that get under my skin about Super Friends really get under my skin. But listening to you and your enthusiasm for it has definitely moved it up in my book. I still think the last episode was much superior, much more superior and really a lot closer to what we want to think of when we want to think of Super Friends. And to me, this was a step back. But it's better than I think I first gave it credit for.
Okay, that's fair. I would go with 2. I would go 2, maybe 2.5, pushing it. Here's the thing, because we've got, a few more episodes coming up. I can tell you right now, just looking at the list here really quick, from my memories, the next 2 are going to be rough.
Are they? See, I remember the next one and I remember liking it.
Oh, okay. See, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that. But I, for some reason, I just feel that the next 2, if I remember correctly, they're going to be a bit more rough before we get back into, this is a little cooler.
We'll see. And we also don't forget we have our Filmation file episodes that we also will be interspersing with these. And I think it's your turn to pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Aquaman. Yeah, I'm going to do Aquaman. Okay. I want to go back to the sea. So
sure. Okay.
Especially in light of the fact that Aquaman got short shrift this episode. So
yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yeah, there was like one of those classic. He's playing wingman to Wonder Woman, who's she's driving around the plane. But then he does have a really cool swan dive, from the invisible jet into the sea to go meet his friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
His aquatic friends.
His aquatic friends, yes.
All right. So before we head out, though, you mentioned it a couple of times, and I introduced you. You're the webmaster for 13th Dimension. What's happening over there on the website?
Well, it's we are with the benefit of what we do is that we have a very heavy retro focus. So what's going on in the industry right now is not really affecting the kind of content we have. We're still doing a lot of stuff. We've been doing a lot in the Batman family this spring because it happens to be the 80th anniversary of Robin, Joker, and Catwoman. So we've had a lot of material on that. Some very good stuff. We recently did Robin Week, which was really, really a lot of fun. As you know, you contributed to that.
Yep.
And we've got some stuff coming up about the Joker and Catwoman and what have you. And, I'm looking forward to doing some more Filmation. And, what you, as I always say, if this is the only way you're familiar with 13th Dimension, come pay us a visit, because if you like podcasts like this, chances are pretty high that you're going to like the website itself. And if you're familiar with us, of course, come on back. I try to post, 2 to 3 times a day if I'm able to, that's, and trying to find different funky ways, you'll get the latest information on any kind of cool, books and reprints that are coming out of stuff that you love and plus, various other features that we do. So come check us out. And we're also, of course, very, very active on Twitter and Facebook.
And that's 13th Dimension, 13thdimension.com.
Yep.
All right. So Dan said next time we're going to be doing Filmation Files. It's an Aquaman episode. Haven't decided yet. I'm narrowing it down to a couple. And then after that, 2 weeks after that, we'll be back with another Super Friends. We're looking at, like I said, we'll see. We'll see. I just seem to remember this one being painful. The balloon people.
I like the balloon people.
Okay. Maybe I'll change my mind once I watch it. It's been ages. Yeah. But I just somehow this one reminds me of one of the more dippier, really lights. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
So cool. I may be coming back and going, yeah, Dan, you're right. This was fun. So, so until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, friends, Dan, take care, everybody.
Bye.